Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can shop online and get easy delivery or free pickup. Get the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Shop the weekly ad, clip deals, and earn points at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
It's forecast to be a very warm week, reaching up into the 80s in parts of the Front Range. Sounds like biking weather.
Which reminds us, tomorrow morning, Denver plans to offer its really popular e-bike rebates. People can get up to $450 towards buying one, but you have to have fast fingers. Previous releases of the rebates have been snatched up in just about a minute. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani.
Coming up, what can you expect from the weather now that it's spring?
Every time I give one of these medium range forecasts, I have to knock on wood or something.
A meteorologist weighs in.
Then, homeless families and advocates confront Denver city leadership.
One mom told me she had called 220 times over a 2-month period.
Plus, Bernie Sanders and AOC drew their largest crowds ever in Denver.
I'm looking for answers, like how do we fix what's wrong?
And in Colorado Wonders, what's with Coloradans not wearing seatbelts?
I remember sleeping on the floor of my parents' truck on road trips.
It's Monday, March 24th.
Here's the news in Colorado today.
This first full week of spring might feel a little bit more like summer at times, but before you pack away your winter gear, remember,
this is March. March is typically our snowiest with about 11 and a half inches of snow, on average.
And more snow is good for our water supply, says Denver 7 Chief Meteorologist Lisa Hidalgo.
So far, we're running pretty good. We've had a couple of really good months, so we're kind of right around average for this time of the year, for the season.
But heads up, the same system that sometimes brings spring snowstorms often comes with serious winds.
Gusty this time of year, that's what we will typically see. I mean, winds are a factor of pressure. And when we see large pressure changes, we get strong wind changes with that pressure gradient.
That can quickly lead to power outages and fire danger.
So that was one of the bigger concerns with these storms, which is typical in spring.
For now, the short-term forecast looks great if you're eager for warm weather. Here's what Lisa expects for the rest of spring.
Every time I give one of these medium range forecasts, I have to knock on wood or something because then it's the exact opposite. Within the next couple of weeks, here's what I will tell you. We've got some warmer than average conditions taking over. Right now, it's looking like we're going to see temperatures that are pretty close to our seasonal norms for this time of year. Right now, it's upper 50s. Then as we get into April, May, we start to see upper 60s, 70s. It does look like we're going to see some warmer than average conditions, though, for at least the short term.
Nighttime temperatures across Colorado are still frigid right now, and that's a major problem for the hundreds of families without housing in Metro Denver who have been moving from city to find safety. This remains a problem despite the capital city's intense focus on homelessness these past couple of years. CPR's Kyle Harris has talked with a number of these families, and he's here now. Kyle, who did you speak with?
I talked to all kinds of people for this story. I talked to advocates, to city workers, nonprofit staff, even the mayor himself. But the families were maybe my favorite folks to talk to. Henry Landaeta, his wife, 3 teenage sons, and their dog Sherlock all live in a tiny Honda sedan, and they've been living there for weeks. They travel all around the metro area, sometimes stay in Aurora or Fort Collins or Denver. And their goal is to avoid being detected by the police because they're afraid of losing their car, they're afraid of deportation, they're afraid of getting arrested. Here is Henry Landaeta.
Efectivamente, lo que realmente está pasando es que los centros de conexión.
He told me that the hotline for homeless families and the resources that the city has aren't actually addressing his family's problem. Right? They're not getting indoors. And that's made it really hard for his families, and they're not alone. There are hundreds of families in the metro area who've been trying to figure out shelter and have not been able to get it. Besides the obvious issues these families face, like cold weather, they're also dealing with finding a restroom or staying clean, getting ready for work. They're also really concerned about education because when you're moving all over the Front Range, it's hard to be able to actually get your kid to school.
As a parent, I can only imagine how hard that situation must be. Kyle, you also talked with Denver Mayor Mike Johnston. He was clear that ending street homelessness was his number one priority back when he took office. What is the city's response to reporting now about families who are still living in cars?
His priority has been cleaning up encampments. This has been a big issue for businesses. It's been a big issue for residents. Denver actually cut the number of unsheltered families by 83% between 2023 and 2024. But sheltering individuals, not the same thing as fixing homelessness. Family homelessness in the state of Colorado rose by 134% during that same period. You know, the city has spent millions and by some estimates, billions of dollars addressing homelessness over the last 5 years, and still the system isn't working for families. Some of these families who called the Salvation Army's Connection Center, the hotline that they're supposed to use to try to just get into cold weather shelter in a 2-day period. One mom told me she had called 40 times. Another mom said 220 times over a 2-month period before even talking to someone. So getting a caseworker is hard. Once you have a caseworker, folks hit another barrier, which is we don't have much in the way of family shelters in the Denver area. There are only a handful of organizations doing this, and those shelters are full.
So what is being done about this situation?
Well, people are aware it's a problem. The mayor's aware. The housing department's aware. Some of these families, like the Landaetas, they are actually going to talk to the mayor's office. They're talking to city officials. They're talking to city council. And every time they have a meeting, they're told that we might be able to have services for you. We might be able to have something. They talk to a caseworker, but no shelter is provided.
Kyle, you mentioned the Landaetas are recent immigrants. How much of the situation is because of the sudden influx of immigration that we've seen? It's estimated more than 40,000 immigrants arrived in Denver over the past few years.
It's a great question. This is not a problem exclusively facing new immigrants. That said, many of the families that I spoke to were recent arrivals, folks who come here in recent months and recent years.
A difficult issue. Kyle Harris, thank you.
Thank you.
The rallies headlined by Senator Bernie Sanders in Colorado on Friday afternoon planted a big flag. His team said the crowd in Denver was larger than any rally anywhere in his political career.
All over this country, people are standing up, and they're saying we will not accept a society of massive income and wealth inequalities. A society in which the very rich are getting much richer while millions of working families are struggling to put food on the table.
34,000 Coloradans went to see him and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-cortez. It looked like a sea of people in Civic Center Park. And it followed a rally in Greeley that attracted another 11,000 people. They watched from outside the arena when they couldn't fit inside. People even climbed trees to get a better view of the big screens.
And why did you decide to come today?
Because I need some hope.
I'm here because I love Bernie. I've loved him for years. I wanted him to be president.
We need to show up, to show in force. More people, the more the government will realize we're unhappy with what is currently happening, and we want changes.
I just can't be complicit to what's happening.
Voters Helene Hooperich, Mary Brown, and Katie Miller. The Colorado visits were part of a national tour for Sanders and Ocasio-cortez, focused on the concentration of wealth and power in the U.S.
Brothers and sisters, we are the richest country in the history of the world. There is no excuse for working class people dying 7 years earlier than the rich. Well, it has everything to do with the fact that we're living in an oligarchic form of society. You know, I've been talking about that for a few years. But I think the rest of the world is catching on to what I was talking about.
Ocasio-cortez said the rallies are meant to start a movement of working people.
So I hope that you see this movement is not about partisan labels or purity tests, but about class solidarity.
In Colorado, it tapped into something beyond what Democrats have been able to offer voters like Bonnie Auslander, who showed up from Lyons.
I'm really concerned about poor people in the United States, and I'm really, disappointed that the Democrats in some sense seem to have abandoned working class people, and this is something I really admire about Bernie and AOC. I'm not interested in the centrist Democratic message of staying the course.
A top Democrat in Colorado agrees that they've been stumped.
The Democratic Party, I think, has been very unresponsive to the concerns and worries of working people in the United States. We might have the rhetoric, but we haven't really delivered very much for a long time.
That's U.S. Senator Michael Bennet. On Saturday, he told a few hundred people at another town hall in Louisville that the party hasn't really talked to working people since Obama. But Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez broke through. Though Sanders said he doesn't intend to run for president again, he does hope Coloradans will replace Congressman Gabe Evans, the Republican who represents the Greeley area. Evans wasn't available for an interview with CPR, but in a statement his spokesperson told us the visiting politicians were extreme and anti-oil and gas. The spokesperson said Evans is fighting for lower costs, safer communities, and making the American dream possible.
Oh my gosh, you drive a manual, just like me.
Everyone already knows you're cool, Ryan.
You're such a nerd, though. You have a club. Look at your club. I'm getting like real 90s vibes.
Every time I get into my car, without thinking about it, I buckle up.
I honestly, at this point in my life, I feel pretty naked if I don't have a seatbelt on.
Oh, yeah. If I don't put on my seatbelt, I just picture myself going through the window.
But that wasn't always the case. For the first 16 years of my life in Mexico, I never wore a seatbelt.
I know. Listener Laura Ferrer probably had me in mind when she pumped the brakes and reminded us not everyone in Colorado wears seatbelts.
I don't know if I'm more surprised that the national rate is 92% or that Colorado is below the national average. A 92% adoption rate is a nice number, but I would expect Colorado to be above that. I wonder if it's our independent Western culture.
For Colorado Wonders, this week, CPR's Ryan Warner picked up Ferris' question and found out just how low the rate of seatbelt use is here. Ryan, what did you learn?
Well, it's 88% in Colorado.
88?
88%, right. And that's less than the 92% nationwide you just heard from Laura.
Absolutely. That seems wild when you think about how long the seatbelt has been around.
Yeah, the three-pointed safety belt was patented in 1962. 6 years later, all new cars in the U.S. had to have them, but it was up to states to decide whether you had to wear them. Laura Ferrer remembers,
I remember sleeping on the floor of my parents' truck on road trips.
But habits have changed. I could not tell you the first time I wore a seatbelt. I mean, I suppose I was strapped in from infancy, but do you remember the first time you wore a seatbelt?
There would be special occasions that you wore a seatbelt. Number one, you would wear a seatbelt when you would go out on the highway.
At a high rate of speed.
Yeah, and the other one is when my dad would see what we call the tamarindo, which is just like the police officer that would give us tickets. And he would just be like, tamarindo! And we'd all put on the seatbelts.
Wait, is the word for cop tamarind?
Oh, no, that's because their uniform is like
tamarind color.
Yes, so el tamarindo.
Who's most likely not to wear seatbelts?
Trooper Sherry Mendez of the State Patrol told me
teen drivers have the lowest seatbelt use rate compared to other age groups.
Her department has a lot of data on this from collisions and citations, but they said the best way to remedy this is to make sure that parents talk to teenage drivers about speed limits and, of course, wearing seatbelts.
And what about police? Do they ever enforce the law when it comes to seatbelt safety?
Absolutely. They can often see through your windows unless they're heavily tinted. And if there are young people in the car unbuckled, they can pull you over as a primary offense. If you're an adult and you're unbuckled, it's likely to be put on top of another reason that they pull you over.
Thank you, Ryan. Additional reporting for today's show came from CPR's Molly Cruz, Chiara Demare, and Denveret's Kevin Beatty.
Colorado Today is made possible by supporters of CPR's fact-based nonprofit journalism. Thank you.
Be sure to follow Colorado Today in your podcast app, and we hope you'll tell a friend about this new podcast. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where teachers can save 5% every day. Download the Safeway app and verify your teacher status for exclusive offers and discounts. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.